approval of the minutes of the November 2nd meeting. Were there any changes that anybody wanted to make to the November 2nd minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Is there a second?
Here, Billy.
Thank you, Billy. Billy seconds. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye, accepting the minutes as presented. Raise your hand or aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes approved. Okay, so now we'll move on to the Kahuku Mauna report.
So Chair, I have an update I will be providing in my Executive Director's report
Okay.
on Kahuku Mauna. But I would like to suggest we take the agenda out of order because we do have some folks in the waiting room for agenda item 6C that after they're done, they can leave. So I'd like to propose we take up item 6C first and then come back and take up items 6A and 6B and then my Executive Director's report.
Okay, I'm fine with that. So why don't you go ahead and move to the information discussion review of the Caltex Submillimeter Observatory decommissioning construction document.
Okay, thank you. So Carrie, you can let Jim and Steve Daw in, please. And I will give folks kind of a little background on this. Jim Hayes from PSI and Steve Daw from M3 are here to provide an overview of the CSO decommissioning pre-construction drawings. A couple of introductory comments. Normally, this is not something that we would bring to the Maunakea Management Board at this point, since you folks have really provided all of your input and approvals previously on the site decommissioning plan and the input on the EA and the CDUA. But because this is our first decommissioning, we are wanting to make sure that all of our advisory groups are well apprised of the process as we're moving through the process of decommissioning, as well as give you folks as representatives of the community an opportunity to provide additional input. There is no approval needed at this point. This is only for information and discussion. But as I indicated, this is not something that we would normally be needing to bring to you folks at this point in the process. The pre-construction drawings have been reviewed by the Environment Committee, by Kahuku Mauna, as well as by what's called the Design Review Committee, which is a special committee that's established for these kinds of major projects. The Design Review Committee is comprised of really technical specialists, engineers, architects, planners, that sort of thing. And they're really there to provide guidance and input on the technical aspects of a decommissioning project in this case. So this has been reviewed by all three groups and there were no significant concerns expressed by any of the groups. There were some smaller things that we have integrated and built into the management plan, if you will. So we will do the same if there are any considerations from this group that you'd like us to build into the actual process of deconstruction. So I believe Steve Daw from M3, which is the engineering firm that is project managing the decommissioning for Caltex, will be walking us through an overview, and then he and Jim are here to answer questions as well. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Greg. And thanks for the opportunity to present our final sort of drawings that we're going to do before we start doing our decommissioning, our actual construction on the site. And so this will be the sort of the last presentation we've been making, and it's been a good run. And so I appreciate everybody's effort and comments along the way to get us where we are. And so I'll just quickly share my screen here and open up some drawings. Can everybody see that? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So as Greg was mentioning, this is a review set that we have submitted to all of you to give you a pretty close approximation of where we are with our progress in the technical effort to decommission the CSO. And so these drawings, we call them 95% construction documents. This is a set of drawings which we've taken as far along as we can in trying to get everybody's final input on before we submit the final documents to the building department for permit, and also for going out to construction to general contractors for bid. I will say that one of the goals that we have here for this deconstruction is to have pre-qualified contractors performing the work. Those pre-qualifications will probably happen early next year. And once we have those, a group of selected contractors, we will submit those drawings to those contractors, and they will provide bids to us. Generally, our schedule right now is that we hope to be complete with the process, including bidding, by mid-year next year, and the start of construction sometime in early summer of next year. So for our drawings, we are basically, these are decommissioning drawings, so they're a little different than our normal set of how we construct buildings. Usually our drawings are quite big sets of technical information. This is deconstruction. So it's, in a sense, it's just, hey, take it down in a way, in terms of the contractors taking down the structure. But a lot of it is, of course, the work that we've been doing over the couple of years related to the environmental assessment and the best management practices. So we've incorporated a lot of that stuff, a lot of requirements that are into these construction documents, so that we can clearly identify to the contractor what their scope of work is and what they are going to have to work with in working at decommissioning at the top of Mauna Kea. So a lot of the general notes, if you want a chance to take a look at it, a lot of the general notes deal with traffic management and monitoring and meetings and all the things that are incorporated into the environmental assessment. The drawings themselves are very technical. For instance, this is a drawing which indicates to the contractor how much grading work that needs to be done. It's a topography of the existing contours, and how we're going to take it down to the original pre-CSO topography. As you can see from this drawing, the shaded areas are cut areas, and the less lighter areas are for fill. It sort of looks like it's half and half, but in reality, if you look at the actual numbers, it's considerably mostly excess fill that we are removing from the site. When we remove this, the excess material, we are going to be moving it down to the adjacent batch plant. Right now, we were proposing that the batch plant be at the temporary construction trailer be at the batch plant. And so that will be our construction site for staging. This will be where the trailers and meetings will be held. It's just right adjacent to the CSO. It's also where we will bring in the excess fill from the site into stockpiles here on the batch plant, which can be used for further purposes by Maunakea. And so I know a lot of this is sort of technical, and I won't go through too much of it with you, but just wanted to let you know that we are getting very close to being done. We, as I said, we're trying to get our final comments from everyone and then incorporate them sometime early next year. And this drawing just sort of represents what we are doing on the site. We are removing everything. It's the alternative that we've chosen, and everyone has agreed. And so it is such that we are actually removing everything on the site. The only thing that will remain is stuff that is somewhat unrelated to the CSO. It's the telephone and data lines that are coming, power lines that are coming along the old access road adjacent to the new access road. Those will still remain there because they do serve other observatories at the summit. So all that will stay, but everything on the CSO site will go away, including the cesspool. Just a little more detail about how our traffic management will go. As you can see, we're very close to the CSO site. And so it should be fairly easy for a lot of the truck hauling that we have to do on this project is related to removing the fill. But fortunately, we don't have to go very far. So we're anticipating a fairly easy management for the traffic between the CSO site and the batch plant. And the rest of it really is just making use of the old drawings that were built, used to build the original building in 1980s. And so we're just making use of those because a whole lot hasn't really changed over the years. So our drawings just simply are identifying the existing facility and what has to be demolished. In essence, all of it, of course, will be demolished. And one of the things when we do have the bidders bidding on the project, we will have a mandatory job walk at the site so that everyone who is bidding on the project can fully understand the scope of work involved. And at that time, we can also invite CMS staff if they wish, and they can respond to questions that contractors may have about some of the procedures involved in working at Mauna Kea. I won't bore you with all the rest of the stuff of the drawings. It's all detail. I will show you, however, one thing that we do have in our project manual. The project manual is where we specify a lot of the technical aspects of the contracts and how to work on the site, etc. More of the narrative version of the drawing set. But one of the things that we are doing in this project manual is to include what we are calling an environmental due diligence construction and implementation scoping matrix. Because there's a lot of stuff in the draft EA or in the EA and also in the best management practices, there's a lot of requirements and there's a lot of different parties who are part of those requirements. And so this matrix is going to be very helpful, particularly for people who are not familiar with the project as it has developed in the requirements. And I'm thinking of the contractors, of course. This will be a very handy matrix for them to understand what their role is on each requirement that we have. So in detail, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that there are permits that are required. There's contracts, training, meetings that are required, other construction activities, inspections. All of the things that somehow are addressed in the draft EA are incorporated here with the matrix on who is responsible, whether it be the governing agency, whether it be an owner group such as the University of Hawaii or Caltex, whether it be consultants such as M3 and PSI and the general contractor, and the other monitors that we are going to hire specifically for the project, the archaeological monitor, the cultural, and other monitors that are required by the BMP and the DEA. So this will be a valuable resource for the contractor, and they will base their bids on their responsibility according to this matrix. And so that's about it. And we're certainly here to answer any of your questions that you might have.
Board members, any questions?
No questions for me.
None for me either.
None from Julie.
Hey, we can hear you, Julie.
Julie,
Yay.
Steve, maybe you can just say a little bit more about what your plans are in terms of pre-qualifying the contractors and some of the things that you'll be doing to try to make sure that they are properly prepared
Yeah.
to do this
Well,
work.
the obvious things, of course, is licensed and bonded and insured. But we will be looking for people who specifically have had experience of working at Mauna Kea. That would be a big plus for us to because it's not only just the requirements from the CMS and working on Mauna Kea and all that, but it's also just working in the environment. It's very different from normal construction. It's a high altitude. It's daily activities are slower up there than they normally might find. Obviously, access is more difficult. And so we're going to be looking to get contractors who have possibly worked at the summit before. And I know there are those that have. And so we will be talking with those. And so it won't be just based upon the low bid. Caltech is mostly interested, of course, in having the right general contractor perform the work. And so I can say that the bids, although we will certainly have numbers involved, the bids will be evaluated on qualifications as much as their costs.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one? This is a simple question based on coming in the middle of all of this. Is M3 playing the role of the architect as defined in the technical specs document? Just so
That's correct.
Okay, all right, got it, thank you.
So if there are no further questions or input, I think, Chair, we could probably move on to our next agenda item.
yes. I think the next agenda item will be your executive director report, or do you
No,
want
we're gonna take up the master plan.
Okay, first. All
Yeah.
right.
I'll do the executive director report after all of our action items. So, Steve, you can cut out, or maybe he has already.
No, I'm here. Thank you very
Okay.
much. everyone.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Jim will be staying on to answer any questions regarding the master plan. Okay, so moving on to the next action item, the Mauna Kea master plan. So tonight is we're bringing the draft master plan forward for Mauna Kea Management Board's recommendation for approval to the University of Hawaii. We've reviewed the plan a couple of times now with this body, and have made, along with based on other public comment, made, as you folks know, significant changes to the plan. I don't know if there are specific questions per se, but I have asked Jim to at least kind of review what has changed since the last draft that you folks saw. So Jim, can you walk the Mauna Kea Management Board through that, please?
Yes, thanks, Greg. I will do that. I'm going to share my screen so that we can show the version of the master plan that we have here. So, oops, I think I shared the wrong thing. Let me get the right screen. Hold on. I'm going to get that one. There. Now we should be in the right place. So this is the master plan and Appendix A of the master plan. And we've reviewed this with you previously, so it's fairly familiar to most of you. But for the benefit of the public that may be attending, we'll talk about this a little bit as well. The first part of Appendix A outlines the outreach effort that was conducted between September 12th and the close of the comment period on, I believe it was October 26th. And we sent out a number of announcements via US mail and email, over 800 announcements. We had a number of press releases and held a forum and made additional efforts to reach out to certain members of the community, including leadership of the Hawaii Island Kia'i, as well as others. And as a result of all that outreach, we received a great number of comments, which was very helpful via our Conveo website commenting tool, the comment form. Some people mailed or emailed their comments to us. We had the hotline recording. And then we also received emails from a form builder that we did not generate, but was generated from the community. And then from those comments, we worked on revising the master plan. And this next section of Appendix A outlines first an overview of the comment that we received, and then the revisions to the plan that were made based on those comments. And I'm not going to go through each one of these in great detail, but just understanding there are a number of changes that were made here in part 1, which we call the foundations, that included changes to the goals and objectives, as well as the criteria for evaluating proposals. And then in part 2, the physical plan, we received additional comments, of course, and made very specific changes in parts of that portion of the document, as well as part 3 down here. And I'm just going through this quickly. And I'll just point out that there were other issues and concerns raised by the community that went beyond the scope of the master plan. And that included things like whether, well, the existing lease between DLNR and the university, the potential for new land authorization, whether UH was the appropriate entity or not to be managing Mauna Kea, things of that nature were beyond the scope of this master plan. So we point that out here. Specifically, wanted to point out that, let me find the right spot here, in, let's see, this is our, what we call our criteria for evaluating new proposals. And we say that proposed facilities and developments within the UH Mauna Kea lands, which will be concepts when they are first proposed to UH, will be evaluated using the following criteria. And these criteria were modified based on the input that we received. And recently we've separated out some of these sub-bullets here. So the extent to which a proposal has the potential to adequately benefit from the conditions on Mauna Kea, increase our understanding of Mauna Kea's resources, avoid, minimize, or mitigate reasonably foreseeable adverse impacts to the resources, and if applicable, employ world-class technology, research techniques, and design. And again, if applicable, and based on input from experts in the proposed field of study, the proposed effort will address critical needs and has a high likelihood of contributing important information over its design life. And then lastly, to honor and benefit Hawaii Island community, particularly with regard to educational, cultural, social, environmental, and economic needs. So these sub-bullets have been expanded and clarified based on the input from this board and the community in general to incorporate a wider range of interests and important aspects of evaluating proposals that come to the university. And then, as I said previously, we've worked on some of the goals and objectives. And so these are the goals associated with, or the objectives associated with the astronomy goal. And one of the new objectives here, let me find the right one. Here, support diversity, support diverse representation within astronomy by encouraging support for a broad range of students and researchers seeking to learn and work on Mauna Kea. So that's an example of some of the changes that have been made to the goals and objectives. And then lastly, I wanted to point out that in the design guidelines, we've added sections related to lighting and radio frequency emissions. And these are based on long-standing policy within the university with the desire to preserve the astronomical or viewing conditions so that those conditions are not degraded within the astronomy area. So those are important additions to the master plan. And those are the ones I wanted to point out, but there are many others. But in the interest of time, we'll stop there and see if there are any specific questions that you may have or discussions that are necessary.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions? Yeah. Hi, Jana.
I just want to make a comment. I appreciate all the attention that was paid to all the comments, and I appreciate the changes that you made, and I think it's a much better project. And thank you for also considering my suggestions. I truly am pleased with your product.
Thank you. Your input was very important to us. Any other questions or comments?
So Jim, were there notable changes that came from Kahuku Mauna or the environmental committee? Because I know they were going to review it before, we saw the final, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Which
Greg,
we
do you
have.
want to comment on that first?
So on the environment committee's perspective, obviously they were very interested in, implications of master plan on an impact to resources. And specifically, one of the areas that they actually focused in a lot on was, while supportive of the idea of expanding the educational uses of halepohaku, they were concerned that this not become sort of open season for any kind of research and any kind of education program, and have sort of a menagerie of folks coming up and wanting to do their research, on site because of the impact of resources. So one of the changes that we made, in part because of that input, but also in part because of some of Andy's input, had to do with one of those criteria that Jim showed you about, wanting to make sure that research conducted on the Mauna is going to contribute in significant ways, either to our understanding of the Mauna, to science in general, or to knowledge in general, humanity in general, as well as, to what extent that research they've thought through mitigating any potential impacts of the resources as a result of conducting their research. So I actually personally found their focus on that to be interesting and actually very, very helpful. I thought they would focus a little bit more on the actual resources, but they focused on that educational component, that expanded educational component, more than I thought they would. For Kahuku Mauna, I think in general, their focus and concerns a lot of it had to do also with education. It had to do with, how broad would these educational opportunities be made? Are we talking about only supporting sort of university related kind of educational endeavors in the expansion of their educational uses of the facilities, or are we talking about making it more available to the general public? And so that clearly is something that we're interested in doing. We have some ideas on how to do that, but in conjunction with the previous comments about ensuring that work, no matter what kind of research is being done, it's being done in a way that's compatible and suitable to this particular environment, and it contributes to our understanding of the resources. We will have to put in place a process for evaluating research proposals, just like we would put in place a process for evaluating a development or a change in use of a facility. So again, they focused a lot on the educational aspects of and uses that we talk about in the plan.
Yeah, I noticed that we incorporated, as applicable, world-class, and, exemplary type programs, so that it's not just anything being proposed.
Right.
I don't have anything else to add. I thought it was, the changes were well done. Thank you, Jim, and your whole crew, because I know it took a lot of work and you worked through it really fast. Again, having that red line version to do the first edit was very, very helpful. So I think, you're now speaking about the additional changes, which I'm assuming from all the comments, I think further clarifies the intent of trying to incorporate, and the spirit of, being inclusive of as many comments as possible.
Yes, thank you. That was our intent.
Yes. Any other comments?
No comments, but I do want to acknowledge that there is some activity in the chat room. I think it's Hank Fergestrom and Kalani Souza. Just for folks' information, no one signed up to provide testimony tonight. There is a deadline that you have to sign up for, and no one submitted written testimony. So in following the rules that we operate by, that's why there was no testimony offered. I see Julie, you are also asking about that. But I do want to acknowledge that there obviously is interest in this matter, and any action by this board does not preclude the university from continuing to work with the broader community on implementation all the way through. So I just wanted to make sure folks understood that.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that the master plan provides the framework for land uses within the UH management area, but it doesn't commit the university to any specific action. And the university will continue to develop programs and work with the community as they develop those programs and as proposals for land uses progress. So there will be additional opportunities for community engagement and making individual projects and programs, responsive to community input.
Anybody have any other comments or discussion? If not, is there a motion to recommend the approval of the draft master plan to the Board of Regents?
Well,
Or
before
is
we
it-
do,
Do we
before we
need to
do,
vote on this?
yes, we do. We do.
Yeah. Okay.
But before we do that, given that there has been some interest expressed in the chat room, maybe we should let Mr. Fergustrom provide his comments.
I think that's a good idea.
That's fine.
So, Carrie, can you let Hank provide his comment?
Did you want to
Sure.
do the 3-minute?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hank, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
Can you see us now? Can you see me now?
No. Okay, now we can.
Okay. Okay, aloha, everybody. My name is Hanale Ferguson. I'm the spokesperson. Excuse me. Can I
Can't
continue?
hear. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Slow down. Okay, let me start this again. I'm Hanale Ferguson. I'm the spokesperson for Nakapuna Moko Kiabi. I'm also an heir to this estate. As you properly know, that these are crown and government lands of the Hawaiian Kingdom, and there's no establishment of any kind of legal authority to allow you to assert your jurisdiction on our mountain. It's our church. Okay, so you need to know that we're watching you very closely on this. We're watching the progress, and we're watching how much you ignore this information. Okay, now we keep trying to work with you, but you always want to select the person that you can control. You go, I mean, all the people on your panel, not on this panel, but the one having to do with Mauna Kea, are all people that work for the University of Hawaii. That is not correct. That is not a broad view of the people. I represent Nakapuna Mokokiabi, which is a broad view of the community. So again, what I'm trying to tell you is that you guys are moving so quickly on this, trying to move this so quickly while we're in this pandemic, that you're not allowing the community to participate. And what little participation you have, it's only when you decide you want to hear something. So I'm telling you very, very frankly, you have no lawful authority to be on my mountain in the first place. The United States has no lawful authority to assert its jurisdiction in the Hawaiian Kingdom. I'm putting you on illegal notice now because we are already in the UN speaking about this particular problem right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Hank.
Do we get the split time?
Yeah.
My apologies. Turns out that the old Hawaiians are hanging out together these days. Go figure. So I'm Reverend M. Kalani Souza. And I need to just inform you as my way of commenting to this process that this morning I was participating with the United Nations Human Rights Commission and the National Security Council hearings at The Hague around the 5th crime of humanity. The first time this has been offered forward since 1947, and it's been seriously moved around the world at this point. And that is introduced by the Prime Minister of Samoa, another fine Polynesian leader, Yame, the fact that ecocide, which is the destruction of the livelihood and the environmental capacity, meaning the fresh water of any area, is going to be considered a war crime against humanity. This is something that is being taken up seriously at this moment, and I would advise the board to watch itself as it moves forward, because the United Nations charges individuals, not countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalani.
Good one, Bob.
3 minutes is up.
Thank you, Hank.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I guess we can move forward, Roberta.
Sorry. So any further discussion? Or
I just wanted to acknowledge that I hear Kalani and Hank on their concerns, and I think I understand where they're coming from, but I also think that we've done as much as possible to preserve the environment of the mountain. And that I think by commenting and meeting most of the comments that are in the master plan from the community, including members of the community, as well as what looks like to be others from the university and the scientific community and agencies look like. I think we've addressed all of the comments that were submitted. And I would, all I can say is that I hope that we've done something right. I know we may not agree on a number of moves that we intend to move forward with. And, but I do recognize the concerns by everyone involved.
Chair, this is Wayne. I'd like to say, and thank you, Julie. I agree with you 100%. I'd like to say, I appreciate both gentlemen and their comments, but these meetings are structured mostly by state statute, some by rules. And we have given the public the ability to provide comments as we're required to by state statute. The continued chatting is inappropriate. They are not allowed to continue to provide comments during the meeting. So I would ask that it's a little distraction for me, and I would ask that we not allow that to continue.
Thank you, Wayne, for the clarification.
I would suggest that we move forward with the motion. Therefore, I would like to put the motion on the floor that we accept the final draft master plan as written.
Yeah.
Hello, did you guys hear me on that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I think we might have lost,
I think we lost the chair.
yeah. I think we lost Roberta. Let's wait a moment till she gets back in.
There she is.
So while she's coming in, Julie, could I suggest that you amend the motion to accept and recommend approval to the UH administration.
Yeah, Roberta, are you in?
Yes, I'm in.
Okay. I'd like to amend the motion that we accept the draft master plan as written and submitted to the Board of Regents.
Is there a second?
I would second such.
Thank you, Billy. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved. Thank you, Julie. Okay, so
So Jim, I think we're good with you. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks, everybody.
thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
So I'm not sure, Greg, if you want to do your executive director's report, or do we move to the next agenda item?
Yeah, well, let's take up the restructuring motion.
Okay. So we will move now to agenda item 6B, motion to recommend restructuring of Maunakea Management Board. Okay, so there
Yeah,
was,
if I could, I just wanted to revisit, actually go back in time a little bit to last July when we were first discussing this. During that time frame, the board wasn't really on board with restructuring the actual board, but since then things have changed. We've had quite a bit of difficulty getting members to the board, and I have been pushing for expanding the board, given the fact that we had a hard time even meeting quorum if someone were unavailable. Also moving forward, there was ongoing discussions of whether or not agencies should be part of our board, albeit non-voting and or taking consideration into being a voting member of the board. And again, initially our concern was something that we hadn't really decided on. Initially, we thought, no, that would be a bad idea. But again, to reiterate, things have changed because we are still in a position where we have had trouble getting people to sit on the board. We've also had, as much as we've been trying to reach out, it's been somewhat difficult. So here we are again. From my perspective, with regards to expanding the board, which would include agency officials as well. So that's food for thought here, which is why the conversation with regards to putting a motion forward to actually expanding the board. And I would like to get thoughts from the other board members on this, since we've been pretty much going through this for close to a year now with trying to figure out ways to expand our board. Any other comments from other board members?
Julie, I agree with you. And I think I've stated in previous points of this order that it's an effort to be more inclusive. And I think it's genuine. How it is actually structured will take the collective wisdom and the advice that we can get from it. But I very much support the approach that you've taken in addressing restructuring. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments with
Yes.
this change? Go ahead.
Actually, it's a question and a comment. First, the question is the motion the entire document that that you sent, Greg. So it was a statement of history and then a statement of the motion. Is it the whole thing?
I think it would be, well, it's up to
motion.
Julie since she's making the motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's only the motion. The first part of it is basically the history, because it was quite convoluted, and even when Doug was here, we really struggled with figuring out how to expand the membership, and I was the one that was really poking Greg about trying to figure out a way to expand the membership, and this goes back to even when Barry was alive. So we've been sort of stuck since then. So the motion that Greg sent out, the document that Greg sent out, is open for editing at this point. So that's sort of how I wanted to approach this, was looking at the motion, determining if we need to make changes. And I would probably suggest that I go ahead and read the actual motion, and we can go from there. Is that okay? Or do you have, I'm sorry, I guess I should say, is there a concern that you have?
I was asking because it refers a lot to the section, it's called Model 4A.
Correct.
But it's not obvious how it relates to that if Model 4A is not what we end up with. That was the.
Yeah, so just my own sort of mana'o on that is the information that I wrote up was intended to try to contextualize the motion in the discussions that have been happening, as Julie has said. But I also I thought it would be important to contextualize it within the context of other specific initiatives and actions that have been taken, specifically the analysis that we were directed to do by the Board of Regents in Resolution 1903. So I think, for those reasons, having some of that background on the record is important. It doesn't have to be exactly as written there. The motion is intended to try to capture the discussions of this group, that as I've heard them, which is being supportive of expanding the membership along the lines of 4A, but not necessarily restricting us to exactly what 4A looked like in that particular analysis. I think we have to allow ourselves to we don't know exactly how this is all gonna work out. But to me, the important part is this board, this body, coming forward and saying we support the idea of restructuring and asking the university to move forward with, bringing forth what that might look like.
In addition, if I could for a second remind folks that the board was vehemently against the restructuring plan proposed by the Board of Regents, including the resolution. And we provided an alternative which did not pass. So again, this is really, in my opinion, this is really looking at how do we actually expand the board to avoid some of the issues that we continuously have been having since 2019, and how can we expand our actions with such a limited board at this point. And we're not really stuck between a rock and a hard place. We're basically hit a wall at this point. And I don't see any other way to expand the board without providing potential leeway with being inclusive with regards to other board members, be it agency participants.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment that we've had a number of discussions. We have not really had anything in writing. I think this is a good time for us to express to the regents the board's interest in, pursuing a structure that may have been recommended before, but I think the way the motion is being proposed is, we don't know, right? The conversations with the agencies are not complete. We don't know if any of the, if any of them want to participate or not, and see themselves, as a good member of, MKMB. But we need to, I think we really need to put it in writing, because efforts are being made to move forward. And, I also feel that it's important now that, we help the university figure out how can we become more inclusive. And one of the ways of doing it is really, expanding the board. So, between Julie, Greg, Barry, I think, and, everything that's happened in the last couple of years, we need to take action. And this is a means of really stating, what efforts we're trying to do. So that's my perspective.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I don't have the history that all of you have with the board, and I came into it supporting the changes that were made because I felt that there was some failure of communication or failure of understanding with the public, or somehow the public and the what was occurring as represented by what occurred in 2018 with the problems of occupation on the Maunakea Access Road. I thought that just needed to be and needed to be improved. And I am really happy to see that there's an effort to try and improve the input, however you can manage it. Happy to see that. I think it's a good suggestion. I think that unless I'm misreading things, the composition of this board or what is the ultimate replacement for this board, it's going to change drastically. And I doubt I'll be on it. I doubt many of us on here will be on it. But I think it will be, if something like it is adopted, I think it will be an improvement. So I strongly support it.
And I think the other important piece is there's going to need to be major rewriting of the bylaws.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that will totally, I mean, it really would be almost an entire rewrite. And I also feel it's appropriate because if you look at when MKMB was first formed and the situation at the time, it's really evolved. It's 20 years later. And, it's about time it be a larger group to reflect more perspectives and, opinions.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think with the change in the bylaws, we might have some heartburn, but I don't see any other way for us to get past some of the issues that we're currently having or have been struggling with for the last 2 years. Shall I go ahead and read the motion as written?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion as written states, a motion is hereby proposed to recommend to UH administration that we restructure the MKMB consistent with the purposes and elements of Model 4A identified by UH in its analysis of alternative management models. The restructuring would include expansion of the Maunakea Management Board to a number to be determined of seats, some of which would be designated for agency stakeholder representation. Further, we recommend that UH administration begin outreach to major agency stakeholders to gain their interest and participation. We also recommend that work commencing of amending the Maunakea Management Board bylaws to reflect these changes to the composition and role of the board. Open to suggestions for editing.
Well, I think I need a second to that motion.
Sorry, yes.
And we can discuss changes.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Thank you, Diana. So we have a motion by Julie, a second by Diana. All in favor of moving forward, say aye.
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 Okay. So now we can move into discussion, further discussion, i.e., any changes to the motion that Julie has presented to us.
I was struggling with this term model 4A to try to put it simplistically, but I was having a hard time with it. So if there's a easier way to identify this model, Greg, is that
The way
any
it's
suggestion?
the way it's described in the analysis that we did, Model 4A is called the collaborative management within UH. And there's a lot of detail that goes behind that, but that's why I was trying to refer back to materials that are already public and available for folks. But that's technically what it was called. It was Model 4A is collaborative management within UH.
Yep, that sounds good. Collaborative management within UH. Within or
Perhaps we could just add that in parentheses.
Sure.
I worry, this is the point I was making, I think, is that the purposes and elements.
Yeah.
It's not obvious what that is. It's not self-contained, right? Unless you happen to know.
Yeah, right. So we can add that in parentheses. And what we can also do is direct people specifically to this reference document, which is publicly available.
Yeah. I have actually one more change, is just a word change. So a motion is hereby, it should be made, I think. A motion is made to recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Julie, do you want to amend your motion to include?
Yeah,
you
I'm
will
writing.
add, okay.
Okay. So let me start again. So the motion I hereby propose to recommend the UH administration that we restructure the Maunakea Management Board consistent with the purposes and elements of Model 4A in parentheses collaborative management. In addition, source documents will be available.
Collaborative management within UH.
Sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
within UH, correct.
Yeah.
Making resource documents available for the public review.
Sure.
Okay, so that's the language change in the first statement of the motion.
Okay. So Julie, you should say a motion is hereby made to
Yeah,
recommend.
so-
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion is hereby made to make the changes to include model, the word ends in model 4A, collaborative management within UH with resource documents being made available for public view.
Right. And then identified by, okay.
I'm sorry, I lost you on that one, Roberta.
Oh, so you're going to insert that whole piece that you just said after model 4A.
Correct.
Then it would continue identified by UH.
By UH in this analysis and alternative management models.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no changes to the rest of the motion.
Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second since I seconded the first motion.
Thank you, Diana. All in favor with the amendment? Oh, wait, you know what? Yeah, well, no, that's okay. We can discuss the amendments. And then we will vote for the whole thing. So we can continue discussion.
I have no further comments on the amendments. Those are fine.
If the person who moved and the person who seconded consider it a friendly amendment, I don't even think you have to take a vote because it really is mostly just a wording change. So it's not substantive.
Good point. Thank you, Bonnie. So we will basically accept the revised motion as the formal motion, which was made by Julie and seconded by Diana.
Correct.
Yeah.
And which we did vote on.
Yeah. So last chance for any changes. Otherwise, I'm going to call for the vote. Andy, are you okay with the wording? Billy?
All good.
So Diana's good, I'm good, Julie's good, Greg's good.
Yeah.
Bonnie, appreciate any advice if you have any, or Wayne? Nahua? Okay, if not, I'm gonna call for the vote. All in favor of the motion as presented by Julie, seconded by Diana. In favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimous approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Julie.
And now we move on to Executive Director's report.
Yeah, this won't take long. I just have a few items. Thank you, everyone. First item is, obviously top of mind was the storm this past weekend, and actually still having the lingering effects of that. So from our operations side, our utility staff, as of this afternoon, we're still working on reopening the access road to the summit area for the observatories. I'm not exactly sure where they are now or how far they've gotten, but as of this afternoon, according to Stuart, I believe access was available to 3 of the observatories, but progress was being made with the others. This storm came with a significant amount of moisture, and it produced a real mix of ice, slush, and snow. So it did require us to keep the road closed to the public for safety reasons, and it's still closed. We encourage, I just want to take this opportunity to encourage the public to continue to monitor our website for road closure information and weather updates, because obviously in these kinds of situations, safety is of primary importance. The next item I wanted to report on has to do with the master plan. Again, appreciate this body's recommendation of approval and acceptance of the master plan, the draft master plan. As I have mentioned previously, public input is being sought on the master plan by the Board of Regents directly. They are holding a special meeting on December 16th, next week, Thursday. At that meeting, they will also be hearing the recommendation of the Maunakea Permitted Interaction Group regarding the master plan. There will be no action taken at the December 16th meeting. They will consider formal action at their January 20th meeting, January 20th, 2022. In addition to the master plan, I will be providing an update on a variety of issues related to Mauna Kea to the Board of Regents, as we were directed to do periodically in Resolution 1903. Specifically, I will be updating them on the status of our comprehensive management plan, where we are with the EIS for a new land authorization. I'll be discussing tonight's our progress on our restructuring, including tonight's action that this body just took on restructuring Maunakea Management Board, decommissioning, and then Kai'u will be covering education and outreach. I don't have that report finalized yet, but I will provide that briefing to this group at our next meeting. I'm still in the process of pulling all of that information together. We will update you folks at our next meeting. In addition, I will make sure that we update you on any changes the Board of Regents may make on the master plan as a result of public comment they receive on the 16th and their own deliberations. So there is a chance that there could be some additional changes to the master plan at this point. The next item I have is just to inform you that as required by the legislature under Act 132, we are in the process of preparing our annual report to the legislature for fiscal year 21. We're required to finalize and submit that report 20 days before the legislative session begins. That report requires us to update the legislature annually on various matters, including Mauna Kea land activities in general, status of current and pending lease agreements and fees, the status of current and pending administrative rules, income and expenditures of the Mauna Kea Lands Management Special Fund that was established in Act 132, and other issues that may impact our management on the Mauna Kea lands. That report is still being finalized, but I will provide a briefing and a copy of that report to this body once it is finalized. I just wanted to let you know that that's sort of on the horizon. Not surprisingly, one of the major themes continues to be, as it has been for the last couple of years, that COVID continues to impact our operations both programmatically and financially. But I think that is probably the case for many others as well. The next item I have is update from our advisory groups. Kahukumana met on December 2nd and provided their input on the CSO pre-construction drawings that you folks reviewed this evening. They had really not very much input, as we discussed. They also reviewed several other minor MKO projects that we presented just for their information that we will be presenting to this group at our next meeting. Kahukumana has also updated has been in their own discussions, as I've mentioned, about their own composition and membership. And they've updated their recruitment materials to try to encourage people who may be interested in serving to put their name in. And they've asked Nahua and I to assist with the recruiting additional members for nomination. So Nahua and I are identifying potential candidates that will do some initial pre-screening with them before bringing them forward for Kahukumana to consider. But they have been actively in discussions themselves, as we have been, about expanding and broadening their composition in an effort to improve engagement with the Native Hawaiian community. The Environment Committee met on November 18th, and again, they also reviewed the CSO pre-construction drawings. No significant concerns were identified. They are meeting this Thursday again, and one of their agenda items will be to begin mapping out their longer-term environmental research recommendations for CMS to consider as part of our update to the CMP. As you folks know, ongoing monitoring, environmental monitoring and resource monitoring is a significant part of our comprehensive management plan. And what we wanted to do was provide the Environment Committee an opportunity to provide us their own ideas and thoughts on what our longer term monitoring and research recommendations or efforts should be focused on. So Jessica Kirkpatrick will be facilitating that discussion. And from that, we hope to identify a list of projects that they feel would be a priority from a research perspective going forward. And lastly, on the community and stakeholder engagement front, both CMS and IFA, both myself and Doug Simons, have been invited to provide briefings on various Maunakea matters, just all things Maunakea, to a number of elected officials and community groups in advance of the legislative sessions. Last week, we met with the heads of our Hawaii Island Chambers of Commerce. There are other groups being organized now as we speak. And we have begun briefings with various elected officials and candidates for office. So this is something that folks have asked us to provide them as they prepare for the legislative session. That, Chair, concludes my executive director's report. I'll take any questions people have.
Actually, I have a question. I guess it's more probably for Bonnie. Just curious what the status of the working group and, if they were gonna, where things are as far as their recommendations.
I was going to offer some comments on that today. We had a marathon meeting this morning, and they're still on track to release the report of the working group on Friday. I don't know what time on Friday, but there's going to be, like the documents that we've been doing, a week or 10 days available for public comment. And so when that notice is ready, I will make sure this group gets it so that you all can look at the document. It's not done yet, but it's getting close. It recommends a new entity, talks about what the expertise and roles of the members of that entity would be. It talks about the selection process. it talks about the jurisdiction of the entity, which is not the same as the UH managed land. So that there's going to be a substantial change recommended there. Grounded in Native Hawaiian values and principles throughout the document. So it's definitely oriented toward conservation issues. So I will commend it to your reading. And I don't know, I believe there's going to be a mechanism for which people can write their comments. But as soon as I have that information, I will share it with this group.
Thank you.
Bonnie, are we, I guess I'm wondering, are we as a board or individuals able to comment on this, the document that's being released on Friday?
Definitely, as individuals, if you, like anything else, if you were to choose to respond as the board, I guess you could do that as well. And I leave it to our attorneys to counsel you on how to do that by sunshine laws. I think you would have to have a meeting to do that.
Yes, that's correct.
So, yeah, okay. Well, kind of as part of my announcements, you know, we are having a special meeting on Monday, the 20th. Everyone's information. So depending on when it's released and, you know, people having time to read it, you know, we could talk about it then.
The current proposed window for public comment will be Friday through December 22nd. So you would have an opportunity to think about it as individuals, respond as individuals, and still discuss it as a group on the 20th if you so wish.
Well, we should definitely put it on the agenda, I think, Chair, for the 20th for sure.
Okay. We still, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be up to you, Greg, on what other stuff needs to be submitted, but we're still waiting on CSO's EA, right? Isn't there something that has to get up?
No, we're done with all of our CSO approvals.
Okay, so CSO's done.
Yeah.
I know,
So-
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about Hokukea.
Yeah. So they're both the decommissioning and the new education telescope. They are. We've asked them to go back and do more community outreach with the Native Hawaiian community around the cultural impact assessment. So that is what's happening now.
Okay.
The consultants are working on that.
And I guess the only other follow-up item that I recall, I was curious how the Imiloa IFA and, you know, the meeting to, I guess, promote community and education, how that's going.
We're supposed to get an update on that tomorrow. We're having a meeting with the MKO directors that Andy and Nahua and I will be part of. I'm not sure sort of where they're at. I know that they have been having these very quiet meetings with a variety of community members about community benefits, but I'm not sure where they're at.
Okay. That's all from me. Anybody else?
No.
So I guess just one quick question, Bonnie. Is it going to be a long document?
Probably.
And all the other long documents. The document I'm looking at right now doesn't have page numbers, but
Okay.
let's see. It's It's only about 20 pages or so, but then there will be appendices.
Okay.
So the appendices will be things like maps from DLNR, the notes from our meetings, which have already been posted on the website, and some things like some of the operational stuff will be in appendices, but the actual report is relatively short as far as these things go.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Greg, for your report.
Yeah.
I think the next thing, I don't believe we have a need to move into executive session unless anybody thinks otherwise. So if not, I want to just announce that our next public board meeting will be on Tuesday, January 4th. Our next special meeting will be on Monday, December 20th. Both meetings at, I'm sorry, so the Monday, December 20th meeting will be at 5:30. And the January 4th meeting will be at 5 o'clock. So to accommodate the date change, the meeting will start a half hour later. Any other announcements, Greg?
Not for me.
Anyone else? If not, thank you very much for attending, and have a good next 2 weeks. And then I wish you a happy holiday at the 20th meeting.
I'm sorry, one last question. So the motion is going to the Board of Regents in the next board meeting, correct?
Yes, I'll be reporting on it, the motion at their December 16th special board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Okay.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
Nothing
Thank
else.
you.
I adjourn the meeting. Have a great evening, and I'll see you on the 20th.
Okay,
Aloha.
thank you, everyone. Bye.
Aloha.
Bye, thank you.